Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Kelly, new here at Villanova, new member of the faculty. But before joining the faculty here at Villanova, I was in the consulting world. I was at McKinsey for a little over 20 years and worked in a range of industries, a range of problems, and traveled around the U.S. and around the world solving consulting problems. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to try to give you a real sense of what it's like to be a consultant, the type of work you would do, the teams that you would work in. And we have a phenomenal panel here that are going to introduce themselves in just a moment, of Villanova grads who are going to talk about their experiences in consulting as we kind of walk you through this industry. But first, my co-moderator, Kyle, is going to introduce himself. Unfortunately, I apologize in advance. I have to step out at 6:45, and from that point, Kyle's going to bring us home.
Cool. Thanks for coming, everyone. My name is Kyle Coleman. I'm a senior finance business analytics major from New Jersey. I'm the vice president of the consulting group, and I intern with McKinsey this summer, and we'll be returning there full time.
Great. So we have a couple of questions we want to try to answer. What is management consulting? What is this profession? What is this industry? If you were to become a consultant, what would you do? And then maybe more importantly at this stage, why? Why would I consider starting my career in consulting? What's the value proposition of starting in consulting and building a skill set in consulting, even if you're not sure what you want to do yet, or even if you know what you want to do? How could consulting be a great way to start your career and build skills and open up options for you as you move forward? We're going to talk about that. And then finally, if this is a path you want to pursue, how might you prepare? How might you start to think about the preparations for learning about the different kinds of firms, learning about the assessment process, the interviews, case interviews or business case interviews, and how do you get prepared for that? And we'll finish up with that. But first, let's go down the line and have our panelists quickly introduce themselves, a little bit about your background and what you're doing now.
Hey guys, my name is Leo Gorhans. I was a mechanical engineer, graduated in 2013. I'm currently in business school getting my MBA, but I spent the past summer at McKinsey as a summer associate, and will be returning there when I graduate in May.
My name is Brady Acton. I'm part of the Deloitte digital practice for Deloitte Consulting, and I pretty much consider us half development firm, half consultancy firm as well. So a lot of the work we do is typically product development. It's very entrepreneurial, the things we do. A lot of systems integration, building out large supply chains, IT, anything related to tech. That's what we do.
Hi everyone, my name's Allison Mead. I'm at Deloitte also in the Washington DC office, so I'm in the government and public sector consulting practice. Full disclosure, I just joined 3 weeks ago, so I'm pretty new. But before that, I was in a consulting role at BlackRock working on different consulting engagements for financial services institutions. So excited to be here.
My name is Jillian McKigney. I'm a senior strategy consultant for Ernst & Young. I have, over the last couple of years, really migrated to predominantly focusing on customer strategy, what the client digital experience looks like, and how the whole industry is moving towards tailoring client needs.
Hi everybody, my name is Scott Nepareni. I'm an electrical engineering grad from 2000. My current job is the client account lead at AmerisourceBergen, so I run all of Accenture's business at AmerisourceBergen, one of the biggest companies in the world, and Accenture does everything from strategy and management consulting to technology and outsourcing. As an engineer, I started in the technology practice, and about 5 years in, I switched positions into the management consulting group and grew my career from there. I'm really excited to be here, really excited to answer you guys' questions and talk with you tonight. Thanks for having me.
Hi everyone, my name is Pete Coyle. I'm an associate at the Boston Consulting Group. I graduated in 2017, studied mechanical engineering and economics while I was here, and since joining BCG I've primarily done strategy work in food and beverage.
Great. So as you can see, we've got a great representation from the industry, but there's a few more firms up on this slide. So the consulting market, and not just at the firm level, but even inside the firms, you heard Scott talking about the fact that Accenture did many different types of consulting businesses inside the firm. Deloitte and E&Y are similar in that respect. But you've got strategy firms that focus on strategy at the top of the house, so management consulting with the CEO and the C-suite on kind of big picture issues. Sometimes it's the overall strategy, sometimes it's just one of the important strategic issues. You've got functional specialists, so this is within the business. You might have expertise in marketing, you might have expertise in operations, you might have expertise in supply chain. whatever the different functional discipline is, there are consulting firms and practices within consulting firms that focus on specific functional disciplines and bring deep expertise on those. Technology and BPO, or business process outsourcing, is another big field within consulting. Technology covers the gamut from technology strategy down to technology decision making and platform selection, down to development and deployment of technology. And consulting firms today are focused on even building new applications with their clients using highly iterative, agile development. Brady, that's a little bit of what the practice that you're in. You want to say a word or two about that?
Sure, yeah. So the main methodology we use is Agile, and that's basically a product management tool that allows us to iterate and create products and technology infrastructure really, really quickly. So for example, my group within Deloitte is called Deloitte Digital, as I mentioned, and we made the Chipotle app last year, which is pretty cool. So how it would usually take with the standard waterfall method, meaning you just create the app from A to B to C to D to E, whatever. We did it with an Agile where we were building out A, and then we were coming back, testing it, and bringing it to market basically, and then doing B, redoing the cycle, and then C, and then D, and we cut development time by like 50%. So it's something that's really prevalent in consulting, especially in technology consulting.
Super, thanks. Maybe do you want to give Jillian just an overview of the range of practices within E&Y?
It's financial services consulting is where I'm at, but we also have similar practices to Brady. There's a technology consulting group and a risk consulting group within financial services. It's banking, capital markets, wealth and asset management, strategy. Strategy can be anything. My group is strategic business transformation. So we help take companies, it's an ideation, really. We make a dream happen throughout similar agile methods, but.
Yeah. So I think the takeaway here is there's not one thing that being a consultant is. The consulting industry has many different sub-industries within it. So everything from corporate strategy at the top of the house to every industry has industry specialized consultants. Every functional discipline has consultants specialized in those functional areas. And then there are consulting firms that focus on different types of business problems that they help solve. So if you want to be a consultant, there's a huge range of possibilities in terms of what you might focus on. And then the flip side of that is there's a huge range of possibilities in terms of what you could learn. So if you just want to generally get into consulting and learn, and you're a bit of an open book in terms of what that could be, you can go into a consulting firm and say, listen, I'd like to try lots of different things, and I like to learn as I go. So it's a great place to get a variety of experiences across a variety of industries and a variety of business problems, and really learn many different things before deciding exactly what it is you want to do, either within consulting or outside of consulting. So what is it that consultants do? Well, we've got two slides here that try to sum it up from the kind of top-down, from strategy perspective. What are a company's most challenging strategic questions? Usually if a company is bringing in outside consulting help, they're bringing in the consultants to help on whatever their biggest challenge is. So you're generally working on the senior management team's highest priority. What is the biggest challenge they're facing? It could be something around digital strategy. It could be that they have a profitability problem or a cost problem. Right? If their industry is being disrupted, they may need to rethink their cost structure completely. It could be about M&A and looking at both the decision about whether to do it, about who to do it with, and then if you go through with the merger, how do you actually capture the value and the promise of the benefits that you saw? And then finally, would you look at a part of the business? If most of the business is healthy, but there's a division that's underperforming, you might go in and actually develop a complete turnaround plan for part of the business. Or you could look at organizational issues. So there's organizational issues and operational issues that consultants tackle. So redesigning an organization structure, looking at a new software platform, and not just picking the platform, but if we deploy it, how do we actually capture value from the new capabilities in that platform? You could be looking at productivity and trying to improve productivity and improve perhaps customer service along with that, or looking at the supply chain and trying to optimize all the inputs. So why don't we go with a BCG example on a recent engagement or case that you worked on and the kind of problem you were solving.
Yeah, for sure. So it actually spanned kind of a number of these. So one particularly fun one that comes to mind was one of my cases last winter, where we were basically redesigning an alcoholic beverage company's sales force to accommodate the changing climate. So recently, if you guys are beer drinkers, you're in college here, so I would imagine the answer is yes to that one. Basically, what we were doing was we were saying, we were seeing that there was a trend moving towards craft beer, and the model that you sell craft beer is very different than the model that you sell import beer or your typical Bud Light, Budweiser, and stuff like that. So basically, we had to redesign their sales force, and how we did that was we actually went out into the field and walked around with the sales reps that were selling the beer to the bars, and basically proposed a totally redesigned sales force to the head of beer for this alcoholic beverage company, and they went ahead and implemented it, and it's in use now.
Excellent. Let's jump one more. So in addition to whatever business problem you're solving, you're also solving that problem within whatever the market context is. So we've got a whole lot of challenges listed up here on this slide. But these are essentially external forces, macroeconomic forces, other things about the environment and the competitive landscape that factor into the problem that you're trying to solve. So Scott, do you want to comment on a business problem that you were working on and how one of these trends played into the work?
Sure, just a quick example. So I've worked in the life sciences industry my whole career, almost 20 years in the pharmaceutical space, primarily in the sales and marketing space. And for those of you guys that follow the news, the healthcare industry has obviously gone under incredible disruption over the last 10 to 15 years, and even seems to be continuing every day. Just a unique example. So one of my clients in the last few years was a company called Celgene. They're a biotech company in Summit, New Jersey, if anyone's from North Jersey. And they recently launched a product in the last couple of years called Otezla. It's for psoriatic arthritis and psoriasis. And it was an oral, whereas all the other products in the market were injectables. So you can imagine as a chronic psoriasis patient or a chronic psoriatic arthritis patient, how great it would be to have an oral pill as opposed to an injection that you'd have to go to your doctor and get. They launched the product, they had all this great, if you watch TV, I'm sure you've seen the Otezla advertisements, right? But what they didn't realize is that doctors make money when patients have to come in and get infusions for their psoriasis or psoriatic arthritis treatment. So this huge benefit that this product brought to market was really preventing their launch forecast from being attained. So in the first year of product launch, they met half of their target. So they brought us in and said, how can we reach our patients and try differentiated messaging? Because they didn't realize, I'm sure they realized, but maybe not as much as they should, that unless there's some significant, and when I say significant, it's not just lifestyle or making it easier for the patient, there's some significant clinical benefit, the doctors are just going to continue to keep their patients on the therapy that they're on because they're making money from it. So we launched a different type of digital campaign, their websites, different types of direct-to-consumer advertising, as well as different offerings they could take to the physicians that would help them still make some of the money that they were making while helping their patients. So it's that type of disruption that's not just happening in healthcare, but in a lot of different industries that make consulting companies that have a different perspective that can come in with sort of an outside view really help with.
Yeah, there's a couple of big themes in there. The level of uncertainty has been rising in business, and the pace of change is accelerating. So we have a lot of disruptive forces, whether it's internationalization and globalization, or it's technology and technology disruption, changing consumer behaviors and preferences and the ways you need to interact and serve your customers. All of these big changes are disrupting businesses, and as you heard in these couple of examples, there were big challenges that the company were facing, so they brought in consultants to help. And that's really what the profession is. It's about helping an organization solve one of its really big problems. So when you come in, you're going to learn that business, you're going to learn that industry, get to know the company, and then you're really going to go deep into whatever this challenge is. It could be a distribution challenge in beer, it could be a challenge Scott's just describing with healthcare costs and patient behavior and doctor incentives and compensation. But these are big challenges that these large companies face, and you really partner with the client organization to solve the problem together. So in most cases, you're not outside in trying to figure the problem out and just tell the client the answer. You're going inside these organizations and getting side by side with the executives and rolling up your sleeves and diving into these complex problems and working with them to solve the problems. And so it's, the consulting firm is bringing expertise, right? Both the individuals there on the ground, but also the network of expertise behind those individuals, right? You're reaching back into your consulting firm and drawing in the people with knowledge, with expertise that can help your client solve that particular problem. So you're a bit of a, you're serving a client, you're assembling the knowledge, you're assembling the expertise, you're delivering it, and then working with your client side by side to help solve the problem.
To add on to that, what's interesting too is a lot of you'll come in with this really great idea, but often it's so radical to the company's current business model that you'll have to convince the client really to make an organizational change. And it's something that will cause a lot of resistance. And I've seen a lot, just in moving towards digital, a lot of financial services firms haven't been there their entire existence. So it is a difficult organizational challenge that you have once you're in there.
Yeah. I've heard some folks describe consulting as half the job is solving the problem and coming up with the answer. The other half of the job is convincing a large organization to mobilize and act quickly. And that second part of the challenge is often a very large part of the challenge. And a lot of the impact consultants can have is help large organizations make change, right? Changing for a very big organization is very difficult. And so we might know the right answer, but we might not be able or willing to change, or we might just not know how to change. How do we mobilize this huge organization to start acting differently? And that's a big part of consulting, is helping the organization manage through that change. And that's where the value really comes in. That's where you have the impact. Not when you have a good answer, but when that answer becomes reality. So, what would I do? And here we're going to look to some of our newer consulting colleagues and more recent grads to talk a little bit about their recent experiences. So just coming out of school, just getting into the job, what's it like? What is your role, and how do you spend your time? So Allison, why don't you tell a little bit about being brand new into the role, into Deloitte, brand new onto your team. What is your role on the team, and what's your week like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what's fun about consulting is you get to try a lot of different things, and your days and weeks can be radically different, and especially when you change projects, your weekly schedule might totally change. So some of the things that I spent, during the first 2 years of my career at BlackRock, and now, moving over to Deloitte, kind of learning new things there too. But as an entry-level consultant, you're really starting to learn the frameworks that your firm employs. So every firm has their own type of frameworks and their approach to solving problems, and kind of your job as that first-year analyst is to put on your problem-solving hat and to start to learn these frameworks and these methods for approaching problems and how to break down big issues into small, manageable pieces. And then sometimes, you're doing more of the day-to-day tasks of project management and talking to the client, and a lot of times that's a little bit of hand-holding or training them on something and answering a lot of questions. It can be a lot of organization and coordination too, setting up different meetings, making sure you got all the key players in the room when a decision is going to be made, and really learning how to communicate things appropriately to get the message across at the right time. But like I said, it's exciting because it can change up pretty often, and I know I've worked on a number of different projects. Some have been a little bit more analytic and data driven, and some have been a little bit more on the strategic communication side. So that's something you can look forward to about consulting, is trying different things.
Yeah. And the work really breaks down into these three categories up on the slide. So part of what you're doing is trying to solve the problem. This is conducting research, talking to experts, running analyses, trying to develop insights, and really the conceptual and creative thinking to try to come up with answers or solutions. Secondly, you are side by side with your clients, and part of what you're doing is working with your clients, and part of what you're doing is counseling the clients, developing a perspective, and then providing those recommendations. So you're a thought partner with your client. You're going to learn from your clients, and they're going to learn from you, and together you're going to try to work towards an answer and ultimately convince the client to take action. And then finally, everything that consultants do is they're really done in a team environment, right? You have a team within your consulting firm, and then you've got a team on the client side. And so that collaboration that's happening with your colleagues, your fellow consulting colleagues, and the collaboration happening with your client means much of your day and much of your time is spent in group sessions. There's lots of time spent doing group problem solving, group brainstorming, And when you come to the table, even if you're brand new, even if it's your first day, you come expected to contribute with a point of view, right? You might not be the expert, you might not know the company or the industry, but as you get into the problem, the rest of the team wants to hear what you have to say. They want to hear what you think. So having a point of view is really important, and contributing that point of view helps the team, right? If you've not spent a lot of time in this industry, you might look at the problem very differently than all those people who've been living and breathing the industry for years and years and years. And sometimes that fresh perspective from the brand new person sparks an idea that the team builds on, and it becomes an important part of the solution. Please.
Yeah, I can just illustrate that. So I just graduated in May from Villanova, right? At Deloitte, one of the biggest positives that I've experienced is that they don't really care what your title is. If you can do the job, they'll put you in that situation. So I just graduated a few months ago. Right now, for my Merck engagement, which is a multi-million-dollar engagement, I'm the project manager. So I'm driving the strategy forward. I'm making sure everyone's on task. Everything's going smoothly, and like most of my job is critical thinking and directing people to do certain things. So the one positive about Deloitte, and I think consulting is like this as a whole, is that if you can do the job, they'll give it to you. And in my personal experience, that ambition can't wait. Like I'm really hungry. I want to start and make the biggest impact possible. And Deloitte and consulting, I think, allows you to do that. So I said, yeah.
As adding on to that point, like I was as a summer intern, during the first week, I was doing one-on-one client meetings. So my manager attended the first couple, and at that point, he's like, "You can go ahead and just do the meetings on your own." And I think that's something that you don't get in a lot of places, but consulting gives you the opportunity to get that one-on-one interaction and to be able to really take ownership of a certain task right from the start. And it's a pretty neat opportunity to be in meetings with some senior level people during your first week at a company and your first week on an engagement, really help them work to driving impact.
And to add on to that also, my current engagement partner looks at the team structure as flat. There's no hierarchy. He wants you there in the meetings, contributing, running them, running working sessions, really being involved and treating you like you have 15 years of experience, even though you definitely don't.
Yeah. So let's do a little build through the day schedule. So this is an example of what your week might look like. You've got blocks of time in your calendar where you're problem solving, doing analysis, doing research. You've got other blocks of time in your calendar where you're meeting with client executives. So you've set up this time, you're going to spend time with the executives. And then you're going to have a lot of time on your calendar where you're with the team, either your own consulting team or the client team, but you're getting together to, you're at the whiteboard, you're brainstorming, you're problem solving, you're sharing ideas, you're testing ideas. If someone else on the team has developed an insight from an analysis, they're going to ask you to pressure test it, to ask questions, probe to see if we can make it better. And it's all done with the intent of building on each other's ideas so that the team collectively comes up with a better solution, and that the whole output of the team is much greater than the sum of the parts, the individual people and what they're doing. That's a bit the magic of the team-based problem-solving approach in consulting.
One thing I would add though to that slide is that in no way are you going to really have a typical week. Consulting is such an exciting industry because there's so much change, and so 1 week you might be doing a lot of client interviews to kind of get an idea for what's going on the ground. Next week you might be focusing more on analyzing data to pull insights out of that. So your week and what you do is always changing, and that's part of what makes the job so exciting.
Yeah, a typical week's a bit of a misnomer. But
Yeah.
give an example, instead of a typical week, give an example of your week and the engagement you were on last summer.
Yeah, so like I just mentioned briefly, in the beginning when I first got to the client side, a lot of what we were doing was interviewing the sales engineers on the ground, because there's often a big disconnect between what managers think, how their team operates and what people do, and when you talk to them, how they actually do it. And so we wanted to get insights into how these sales engineers were working, how they were spending their time, what opportunities they were going after. And so we did dozens of interviews in that first week to kind of get a picture of what the situation is actually like. And then based off of that, the following week we looked at a lot of the data that they had. They had this data available, they just weren't looking at it, partly because it was messy and partly because it was very siloed in different areas of the company. So bringing all that together, we were able to then start drawing insights from, look, this is where your people are spending their time versus this is where they probably should be spending their time, because these clients are way more profitable.
Great. Okay, so let's shift gears to why is consulting an attractive place to start your career as you're coming out of school. I'm going to ask Scott to chime in here as well. The notion of consulting as a professional development accelerator or as a career accelerator is part of the value proposition of why you might come to consulting. You're going to get incredibly intensive development, training, mentorship, one-on-one coaching. You're going to get pushed into situations that might make you a little uncomfortable because you're going to go interview a senior executive on your own as someone who's relatively new. Or the CEO is going to ask you for your point of view on the problem. Right? Those are the kinds of things that are challenging, but they are developmental. They help you grow. And there's people around to coach you, give you feedback, support you, and help you develop. So while consulting work can be intense work, the level of learning, the level of development, and your growth, right? Growth as a leader, growth as a problem solver, and the skill set you're building around communication, presentation, structuring and organizing your thoughts, taking a complex problem and disaggregating it into simple logical parts that you can then attack to develop a good recommendation, right? All those kinds of skills you build as a consultant, and those skills are very valuable and very marketable when you then think about what you want to do next.
So I won't bore you with the big backstory, but I started my career in consulting because I just knew despite me going to Villanova very excited as an engineering student, I knew I did not want to be an engineer. If anyone wants to stick around, and I'll tell you that story later. But why you should start your career in consulting is because you will get more experience in a shorter amount of time than any of your peers that are working at a big bank, at a big consumer goods company, a big marketing firm. You will get more experience in a shorter amount of time than you will at working in industry. It's just a fact. You will be put in situations as a 23 or 24-year-old associate, junior consultant that an associate at a big corporation just will never be put in. And the marketplace recognizes that. So when you have 5 years of consulting experience, that's like 10 years of regular experience. And I may be exaggerating to make a point, but it's known in the marketplace. Your clients recognize it. For the new folks that are new to the consulting industry, if you haven't been offered a job by one of your clients yet, you will at some point. There's no doubt about it. And the experience and market recognition, especially in the firms that the folks that up here on the panel work at, the McKinseys, BCGs, EYs of the world, they have reputations with very senior level folks in very important positions within industry. And it's a really good question to ask yourself that even if you don't see yourself being a consultant, and frankly, if I told you, 20 years ago that I was going to be a consultant, no way, right? I was going to go work at Anderson Consulting for 2 years. I was going to go to business school and graduate and start a business and be a millionaire, right? That was the vision. And I enjoyed the people that I worked with. I enjoyed the challenges that I was encountering every day. I enjoyed the relationships that I was forming, both with my colleagues and with my clients. And here I am today, kind of still trying to figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I can really add to that because I was first in industry before becoming a consultant. So when I graduated in 13, I went to work for BMW on their manufacturing side. And comparing now sort of the learning curve and sort of the pace of what you do, it's just night and day. As a consultant, as soon as you reach the top of the learning curve, you'll just start the next one. So it really, really does challenge you, but that enables you to grow immensely.
And going off of that, if you guys are anything like I was, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I still don't. This is a great opportunity to see how a lot of different industries and companies operate, and if you can see yourself going into any one of those, you'll meet a lot of interesting people with a whole plethora of different points of views, and it will really shape, where you just think about where you want to go 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line.
I think I can speak a bit towards that too. So I spent the first 2 years of my career really focused on financial services and working in finance, and I was in a consulting role there, which I think helped me transition. So so I was working in finance and in a consulting role developed, what I like to think of as the consulting toolkit of learning how to break down problems and how to communicate them and how to present them, which is really something you can apply to any industry. So now I'm kind of totally transitioned to work for government and public sector clients. I'm doing human-centered design and innovation portfolio work. So I think it's just a helpful way to build your base skill set, and then you can really kind of, once you get a better idea of where you want to use those skills, it kind of helps you funnel that path down.
Who here has done some economics coursework? Who here has taken any finance classes? Right? familiar with the concept of option value and how you build option value? So starting your career in consulting is not a narrowing event. Right? By finishing your degree and starting a career in consulting, you are creating option value for yourself. You're creating option value around what you're going to learn, option value around the skills you're going to build, and the doors that are going to become open to you. Right? As Scott said, if you do a few years as a consultant, the range of career possibilities expands dramatically. You become, your marketability and your attractiveness as a candidate goes up dramatically. I don't think it's an exaggeration, the kind of 5 to 10. Some people would say 3 to 10. And clients, clients of mine who are doing the hiring, look at people who've been in a consulting firm, one of these consulting firms, for 3 or 4 years, and they're hiring them for jobs that are 10 to 12-year positions for folks that kind of come up through industry. So you're creating both accelerated skills, but you're also opening up options. You're going to have a wider range of options for what you can go do next. And if you don't know exactly what that is, or even if you're just not 100% sure, that option value has real value, right? You're going to learn about a whole range of new industries. You're going to learn about different functional jobs inside those industries, inside those companies. You're going to learn what you like, and you're going to learn what you don't like, which is sometimes even more important. And then, based upon the training and the skills you develop, you'll have access to those opportunities because you'll be highly marketable to go do what it is you decide you want to go do.
I think that there's the other flip side of the coin on that as well, around what you recognize about your own potential. Because frankly, and it can be intimidating, right? As a 25-year-old associate, you're going to be sitting in meetings with people that are 10, 15 years older than you. And you'll recognize that you have capabilities to do what those people are doing. And more, and you develop a confidence in yourself about what you're capable of that's not just applicable in consulting, but in other things, because I forget who mentioned it, but because you're put in situations that other people at your age aren't necessarily put into, and a client will offer you a job. Funny story, I was in my late 20s, and the vice president of commercial operations at Wyeth Pharmaceuticals offered me like a director of sales incentive compensation. I said, listen, great, I love working with you and your team, but that job doesn't excite me. And he said, well, what job would excite you? And I said, your job. And he got a chuckle out of it, right? But because I really honestly felt at that point that I had done all of those other things, and that would be a challenge for me, right? And it does develop, you develop a sense of confidence in yourself to be in those professional situations, and say, I don't know everything, but I bet I know enough to be good at X. So it's not just about what the market perceives you as. I think there's a confidence that builds in yourself professionally about what you're capable of as well.
So this might be a good time to pause for questions, because we're inside this section called Why Would I Want to Start My Career in Consulting? And you all may have questions about, should you start your career in consulting, or why would you think about it, why would you consider it? So are there any questions for the panel about their experiences, or about consulting, or things that you're wrestling with about the field?
I'll go first. My name's Ham, a sophomore in the School of Business. Thank you so much for having us here today, and welcome back to Villanova. So from your professional experience, what do you see in management consulting that is so alike with the Villanovan spirit?
Great question. How did Villanova prepare you for consulting? And how is consulting like Villanova?
I can start off that one. So I think Villanova has a very collegial, team-oriented community, and I think it's really common to find that on your consulting teams as well, because consulting is a very people-oriented and team-oriented business. So you do need to be able to communicate really well and get along with a diverse set of people, and that's even just your media team. Then you also have your client teams too. And so I think Villanova does a really good job of, we're a social community. Everyone's really friendly and everyone really supports each other, and just the different classes really emphasize working in teams, doing group projects, and so I think that translates really well to the consulting world.
Yeah, that's well said. The most successful consultants that I have encountered are the ones who make the people around them successful. Right? One of the first pieces of advice I got when I went into consulting was beware the self-promoter. And avoid, right? It was finding people who were interested in making the people around them successful. The very best consultants are focused on making the people around them successful. People above them successful, more junior folks they're working with, focusing on making them successful, and maybe most importantly, helping make your clients successful. But in consulting, it's not about you. It's not about individual achievement or individual recognition. What you thrive on as a consultant is the ability to help make others succeed. So there were a lot of people who didn't understand what a consultant was. I actually went to law school, and so everyone thought I was going to be a lawyer, and then I went to be a consultant. And many people were very disappointed that I was not a lawyer.
Maybe he didn't pass the bar.
So I was a consultant, and people just didn't know what that was. And I got the question a lot, well, what is a consultant? What does that mean? What do you actually do? And I struggled to answer that question for a while, but ultimately I landed on that answer, right? What do I do as a consultant? I had two jobs, very, very simple, two jobs. Make my fellow consultants successful, do everything I can to make my fellow consultants successful, coach them, develop them, support them, do what they're asking me to do, and make my clients successful. If I can make my clients successful, then that's exactly what I'm here to do. And helping make a client executive succeed, helping them achieve what they're trying to achieve, I got great satisfaction from that. I thought I would be a consultant for 2 or 3 years as well. I stayed for 20 plus because I loved helping other people. And my entire job was helping my colleagues succeed and helping my clients succeed. And that was the simple answer, and that's what gave me personal fulfillment, and that's why I stuck with it for so long. So I think we've touched on these things, apprenticeship training, and maybe the third one we haven't quite hit on yet, which is personalization or customization. We've talked about the variety of things that you get to do as a consultant, but the reality is you also get to choose what you do want to do and what you don't want to do. And you don't get to choose absolutely, but consulting is meritocratic. So the higher you perform, the more choice you have about what you do. Right? In consulting, you don't have a boss. You don't report to someone. You are staffed on engagements, and you move from team to team. If you're on a team that you don't like, well, that team's going to end, and you're going to move to a new team with new people. And eventually, you'll start selecting the people you want to work with. So you get that kind of choice about who you do want to work with and who you don't want to work with. But because it's meritocratic, the higher a performer you are, the more choice you get, the more freedom you get. And ultimately, the highest performers get to decide almost exactly what they do and what they don't do as they shape their careers and personalize their journey. So this is a slide, which is so there's things you learn in consulting. The left-hand side is the industries, right? The top of the page is functional disciplines. The bottom of the page are different kinds of companies or clients, and the right-hand side are skills, right? General management skills, entrepreneurial skills, problem-solving skills. But around this graph, these contexts, these are all the different things that you're going to learn, right? We touched on this a little bit, but you're going to learn different industries. You're going to learn different functional disciplines. You learn how to work with different size companies. You may do work in the public sector. You may do work with investors like private equity firms. And then on that right-hand side, you're going to build a set of very valuable, very marketable skills. So that's a bit, in a nutshell, the value proposition of why you would think about going into consulting. So I think we can skip. Well, transfers you can move around geographically. Has anybody transferred geographically yet? Probably not. You have from.
Well, I did 6 months in Singapore on a consulting engagement.
Yeah, I think this merits a bit of time because I don't think there's other industries maybe in the world that can offer you the amount of things that you see on the page here than the consulting industry. I mean, like I mentioned, I've grown up in life sciences, which is very concentrated kind of in the northeast part of the U.S. in terms of the amount of companies that are there. But I have friends and colleagues, and I've traveled all over the world, worked with teams all over the world. The team I'm on now at AmerisourceBergen, several hundred people. We have people in Brazil, Argentina, U.S., Europe, India, China. I mean, the amount of exposure that you'll get to different cultures and different people is really amazing. And I know my firm, and I'm sure the other firms up here do as well. There is a lot of, I guess you're calling them secondments up here, but there's a lot of really cool charitable opportunities that our firms operate in. I know my colleagues have taken 6 months off and gone to work in Africa and helped develop irrigation systems to bring water to towns that don't have water, or educate students in China and Thailand. And our firms encourage our people to do that because, frankly, our clients want people, they want to work with people that have those types of experiences. So if you like to travel all the world and have different experiences, I don't know, unless you're in the Army or something maybe, I don't know. But I don't think there's a lot of industries that offer the level of options and opportunities that are out there. I mean, it really is limitless.
And going off of that, actually, EY does offer the ability to take the summer off, to go to Thailand, go to Africa, do these things that will fulfill you. They encourage you to seriously take the entire summer. I was tempted, but I didn't do it. And just going off of that, I've traveled all over the U.S. I'm in 4 different states this week, just because. But you do travel a lot, and it is a great place to see cities that you might not even know the name of prior to going there. And it is a great opportunity, just like I said before, to see how different companies and how different employees work for the same company across the U.S. and the world.
Yeah, it's a great dimension of flexibility, right? You've got geographic flexibility to go work in places you want to work. I did work in China and South America, in the Netherlands, UK. And it's a dimension of timing as well. So you could take time off to go do something else. It could be a secondment or an externship or pro bono, or it could be a personal interest. So one person I worked with for many years worked 9 months a year. And that was because he wrote novels. And so he took 3 months off every year and wrote to write. And he would try to write his novel, sometimes in 1 3-month stretch, sometimes it took 6. But just structured his life that way. And in an industry job, that would be very hard to do. But because consulting work is project-based, you can have more flexibility to set up and structure your work to fit your other interests.
Yeah, the externships, I would say, are incredibly unique to consulting. What that is essentially if you want to take off, let's say 3 months to go work for a startup, either for your own personal growth or because you really believe in that cause, you can go work for that startup for 3 months and then come back to your consulting firm. I don't know any other industry or other set of companies that would allow you to just go do that. That's another, I think, incredibly valuable thing.
It also extends outside of your actual job as well. So Deloitte has something called alt travel, meaning if there's a place that you want to go to that's cheaper to go to from your client site versus going back home, they'll pay for that completely. So for example, if your client site is in Chicago and I live in New York and it's cheaper to go to LA for the weekend, they'll pay for my flights and then just come back to the client the next week. So like go see my friends pretty much anywhere. I mean, I've heard of people, they're in New York and they go to San Francisco and they spend 2 or 3 days just on vacation, just randomly in like Tokyo. It's crazy just the amount of flexibility you have with travel.
I had a team in Atlanta that was mostly people from New York, Boston, and they spent a lot of weekends in New Orleans, as it turned out.
Big time.
They were slightly less productive on Monday morning. So let's get through that, just in the interest of time. Places you can go work, right? There's lots of former consultants that go out into large companies in very senior roles. There's a whole lot of CEOs who are former consultants. Or you can start a company. There's lots of consultants who go on to start companies. And lots of consultants who go on to public service. That can be in the nonprofit sector, NGOs. Really, as a consultant, you're developing a skill set as a leader. And organizations looking for leaders often look to former consultants because of the leadership skills they build. And that includes public service, it includes nonprofits and other organizations and entities that need leadership. So I am going to say thank you and good evening. I have to go to another commitment. But I am here. I'm in this building up in the office. My office is 3080 up on the 3rd floor. I'm actually going to be teaching strategy in the spring if you're going to be taking strategy and you're a senior. And I look forward to meeting more of you who are interested in consulting. I am now the faculty advisor for VCG, the Villanova Consulting Group. And so I'll be spending a lot of time with the consulting group and with all of you. In the last couple of weeks, I ran a few case workshops, which were workshops focused on learning how to do case interviews, which is what you're about to talk about. And we'll be doing more of those through the year. But if consulting is something you really are excited about, come see me. I look forward to talking to you. And enjoy the rest of the night. I hand it over to Kyle.
Thank you, President. So now we're going to quickly walk through how to prepare for case interviews and kind of what they look for in case interviews, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. So I guess from a recruiting standpoint, what consulting firms are looking for, they're looking for problem-solving skills, communication skills, and leadership and teamwork skills. And then they can find this out through your academic record, like your class you've taken, SAT, ACT, your impact on campus, so whether you're a leader, what clubs you're involved with, whether you volunteer, maybe you did a service trip, maybe you were involved with the president of a society, maybe you just got involved with the dean's council or something. They also look at your work experience. What did you do in your summers? Did you do a co-op? Did you intern at a different company? And then they look for the case interviews, which is the part that we're going to focus on now. And that's something that's very unique to consulting. So I guess basically a case interview is where they give you a business problem and you solve this business problem over the course of 30 minutes, kind of talking through logically how you would go about solving this problem and what you'd look for, what analyses you'd run, how you would do those analyses, what problems you're trying to solve, and what questions you're trying to get answered. These are just some examples in here, but we're not going to focus too much on the case interview right now. So I guess we wanted to highlight, here's some couple tips up here. Basically the biggest tip is to practice. And if you're going into consulting case interviews, you can't prep the night before. It's something that requires a lot of practice, so you should practice a couple weeks or a couple months ahead of time and find a case buddy would be my recommendation. I don't know if anyone else on the panel wants to add anything.
Yeah, I guess I can. And in addition to practicing cases, which you should do a lot of, one way to kind of get better at cases is to sharpen your business acumen, and you can do that through exposing yourself to the business world. So, reading business news, Wall Street Journal, The Economist, listening to business podcasts, just so that you're more exposed and start thinking about, why do companies do what they do? Why do people do what they do? So that if you're in a case interview and you come to a complete brainstorming session where your interviewer just says, I don't know, what should we do? Then you're able to just fire off ideas about all these things that you have from your experience, just what you've learned and what you've seen.
Yeah, and just to tackle one, the case interviews are pretty unique, and they can take some practice to learn how to do them. And one thing that's going on in the industry is interviews are moving farther and farther ahead. So for those who applied to McKinsey and BCG this year, I know that those interview dates were September 1st, something like that. So what happens there is basically it's getting backed up to the beginning of summer, and there's not much time when you get back on campus to prep. So I'd say really think about throughout the rest of this school year if consulting is something you're really interested in, and use Kyle and use BCG to get an understanding of that. And if it is, lean on them to take their lead on how to begin to prep for these things. And we're working on it with the business school. We're working on it within our firms to figure out how to enable people to do this and enable people to get the correct preparation. But really try to think about it up front, because it just creeps up on you in the fall, and it's tough. It's really tough to cram it in.
Yeah. Just kind of emphasizing Pete's point, you really have to be on top of the game. And so we've run a couple case interview practice sessions, and we'll run some more going forward. But one other thing that we wanted to highlight tonight is Management Consulted. So the business school is piloting a program with Management Consulted, which basically has a lot of cases within a case bank for helping you prepare for interviews, but they also have resources figuring out what is consulting, what skills do you need for consulting, how do you prepare for those skills, what are the math skills, what are the PowerPoint skills, what are the Excel skills, and just understanding what the consulting industry is, what it takes to be successful, and then ultimately how to prepare and ace the interviews. So for this, I think we have some handouts. So you can pick up a handout on the way out. If you sign up on this site within 24 hours, you'll get granted access to it. And it's great for prepping for interviews and learning more about consulting. So I highly recommend everyone grabs one of those sheets on the way out as a useful resource.
And going off of that, you guys are all students of Villanova University. Reach out to your network. I've had so many people who are going through case interviews who went to Villanova reach out to me on LinkedIn just for a quick tip here and there. I do see those messages. People do get back to you. Your network is still there. You all come from the same place, and we want to help you.
It's a great point. There's a lot of Villanova alums in these consulting firms now, and they're getting these consulting firms very excited to hire Villanova people. So these firms are on campus, and it's amazing. It's awesome. These firms don't recruit at a ton of campuses, so really take advantage of that. It's an awesome opportunity.
Yeah, probably a half a dozen folks over the last year have reached out to me, and every single one I've either had a phone conversation with, had lunch with. I'm certainly happy to write my email address and phone number on the board. I welcome you guys to call me anytime, or any of us anytime. I mean, there's no reason why. I want as many Villanova people at my firm as possible. Frankly, Villanova has changed a lot since I went here, and not to sound the wrong way, but the group of students here at Villanova are an extremely impressive group, and any of the firms up here would be lucky to have you guys as employees. And don't underestimate the brand that Villanova has with employers like ours. You should be proud of it, and you should leverage the network of folks like myself and the people up here anytime.
So I guess we're going to shift the focus away from kind of prepping for interviews. We've done some other resources there. And we just wanted to open up the floor for any questions. We've got a group of 6 panelists up here that have many years of experience. So what do you guys think would be useful to know? What do you want to know? Just open up the floor. Yeah.
Simon Brooks, I'm a software engineering student. I was wondering, have you had any like ethical dilemmas with clients or projects that you were assigned that you really didn't want to do but felt you had to do or anything like that you were willing to share?
The short answer is no. In the business of consulting, I mean, my company, and I'm positive all these other companies, because I know people that work at your firms, the code of ethics that companies like ours are driven by is extremely rigid, and it has to be. I mean, we're working, I can walk out, and not the right example for me personally, but I can walk out the door at Pepsi, and the next day show up at Coke, and starting to answer questions. Like you have to be incredibly ethical to operate in this business when you're pitching bids for hundreds of millions of dollars of work, working with different clients in the same industry. I would say absolutely no. And in those couple situations that I know where those things could even happen, firms, put it this way, firms would much rather walk away from the business than put themselves in a situation like that. It's just not in our case, and I'm sure the other firms up here, it's just not worth the risk.
The only thing I can think of that sort of relates to this is, so I do consulting in the government and public sector.
Different ballgame.
Yeah, and so the only thing I'm saying, I would not call it an ethics issue by any means, just sort of a personal preference. And this is not a personal example, but I know there's, some projects going on in the federal sector that might be carrying out a specific administration policy that maybe doesn't align to an individual's particular politics, and I think it's a common thing for people to say, like, this doesn't align with my personal values, and I've seen that handled very professionally in the industry. So.
What other questions do you folks have? Go for it.
Have you guys ever thought about starting your own firm? And if so, why did you choose not to?
I can answer it pretty simply. There's a lot of risk associated with starting your own company. No, but I do know a lot of, he showed some examples before. A lot of my colleagues growing up over the years have left to either start their own consulting firm, start their own startup, join a startup, because consulting is entrepreneurial, right? Especially when you grow up in the firm, like folks like Steve and myself. You own a book of business, you're trying to grow your business, you're thinking of new ideas, you're developing new relationships, and people like that, right? And working for yourself can be very lucrative as opposed to working for a big firm. The skills that you learn as a consultant will lend themselves to you starting your own company if you like that. I frankly have a lot of respect for people that have left my firm and other firms that I know to start their own business. It takes a lot of intestinal fortitude to do that. I've considered it in the past, but leaving the cozy confines of a Fortune 500 company is difficult to do for most people, especially when you have 3 little kids at home. So, but no, you'll have the opportunity if you want to, and people do it a lot.
I would also say probably most of the firms we're at offer opportunities within the firm to kind of test out those interests under the shelter of still being a consultant at your firm. So, for instance, right now, they call it a firm initiative, but I'm doing on the side pro bono consulting for a social impact startup, and we're helping them get ready for their VC pitch. So it's kind of a way to test out those muscles and see if you really like it while you're still kind of under the safety of your organization.
I think you learn skills that lend themselves very well to starting a company. You come in for 2 years, you're really spoon-fed best-in-class skills. So you're interacting with executives and you're interacting with senior people within your firm, both of which have had very successful careers. So your mentors, the people that you're learning from and watching, are very good at what they do. And that's one piece of it. And then the other piece is you really learn to prioritize very, very well, which I think is a huge part of starting your own company, right? And being able to look at what is the key thing that I need to be driving towards all the time and continually reassessing that is something that you learn really well in consulting, and that would lend itself well to that.
I just want to add, my name is Suzanne Seidel. I'm an adjunct faculty here. I teach leadership and organizational communication over in arts and sciences, but I'm also a business fellow and an executive coach over here. Now, I worked for Anderson Consulting for years in change management, Arthur Anderson Business Consulting, Bearing Point, and Deloitte as a contractor for the last 10 years. And so the thing that I want to comment that you might not be thinking about now, but when we talk about looking long-term at your career, you may not always think initially early in your career that in consulting you have a great work-life balance, because you do work hard and you work a lot. But I will tell you, at this point in my life, because I developed those core consulting skills as a mother of 2 kids, I never stopped working, but I always worked part-time, made more money than I ever did working full-time, and it really gave me a skill set that I still have that just gives me a great quality of life in the long run as well.
I think it's a great point. I think there's a stigma. Everybody thinks consultants are on planes all the time and work 80 hours a week. And we'd all probably lie if we said that didn't happen to us at one point or another during our careers. But me being at 20 years, at Anderson Consulting and at Accenture, I have more control over my day-to-day work than I ever have in my life. I can choose to go to work tomorrow if I want to, or I can choose to stay home. Frankly, it's my business. I can choose to run it how I want. And it does offer you, as you grow up in the firm, a lot of flexibility. But you also have to be willing to take advantage of it, right? I think that folks, and I think a lot of the traps that the young associates in our firm fall into is they think that if I just work all the time, then I'm going to get promoted and I'm going to move up the chain, and it's just not the fact. You have to work smart. You have to do the right things for your clients and for your teams. It's not just about showing up to work early and staying late and being willing to travel all the time. But you will have to do some of that, just to be clear. Thank you for that, by the way.
Yes.
In the back.
Hey, my name is Harrison. I'm a sophomore in the business school. And I was wondering if there's certain majors or activities that you on campus that are better and more career for someone who wants to pursue a career in consulting.
So if you look at the panelists here, we're all different majors, so there really is no major that falls into consulting.
Yeah. I think at consulting firms and with our clients more than ever, diversity of thinking is being valued more than it ever has been. I mean, I know Accenture's hiring students with degrees that we would have never hired 10 years ago. Frankly, because we want new perspectives, we want different backgrounds and different educations. I have folks on my team that are English majors, political science majors, biochemical engineers, math majors, a lot of finance and business, obviously, but I would honestly say I've done a lot of interviews over the 20 years that I've been in consulting, and I don't even look at what the major is on the resume, frankly. It doesn't matter to me. And I would imagine to say a lot of the folks at the consulting firms that you guys interview with will probably view it the same way. Now, if you work in financial services, you got to know how to read a balance sheet, so that's a core skill. But in other industries that we work in, the diversity of thinking and different perspectives is really, really valued.
I didn't study finance, so
Go ahead.
I am in financial services and studied economics. You pick up a lot of these skills there. For the people who have studied science, who have done this for 5-10 years, they will guide you, and that is one of the best things about working for a company or working in consulting. You have resources available who have 10-20 years of experience who want to help you and grow your career and really develop you as a person.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh.
Pretty much, so, got it.
Yes.
Yeah, Matthew Farias, software at Villanova School of Business. I'm planning to do finance and MIS. You kind of touched upon it, Scott. I just want to know, I don't want to ask exactly how's work-life balance, because it looks like you guys have a lot of time with your team and you have a nice social life. But there is that stigma of traveling 4 times a week, and there is that stigma of you're always away from home. I just want to know, especially for the people who are more experienced in the firm, how has that relationship been with your family? I'm just a little bit scared, thinking about being at home, away from home all the time. More on the personal side, but just something to think about.
These guys can give you the most recent perspective. For me personally, it's changed. I mean, you guys, I'm at a very different stage in my life than you guys are, so this isn't going to resonate. But when I was your age, I wanted to get out on the road. I wanted to experience new things. as you get older, you get married, buy a house, you have kids, your priorities change. I mean, that's just the way it is. But I will tell you that you'll have more control over that over time than you think. I know my firm specifically, within the last year, we've actually changed our operating model to drive more regional work so that you don't have so many people on planes all the time. And it's not because we want to decrease our carbon footprint, frankly. It's because you want people working in the communities and cities that they live in and developing those relationships. You want your partners and junior executives on boards of local charities of, you'd be surprised how many of my clients' kids play soccer with my kids, but I never get to see them at the game because I'm always on the road. You know what I mean? So there are initiatives I think all firms are taking to bring folks closer to home. That said, I'll be honest with you, if you're like, listen, I want to work from 9 to 5 every day and I want to come home and walk my dog and then read a book on my back porch every night, consulting's probably not for you. I mean, it is a bit of a lifestyle and you have to adapt to it. But you'll get more control of that over time. I'd be more interested to hear what some of the more recent graduates have to say about that.
Yeah, I can add to that because, like you said, the firms are really conscious of how much of a problem they've been in the past because it leads to high turnover, and high turnover is not good for business. They want to keep you, they want to keep you at the firm, so they want to make it sustainable. And so, for example, if you're traveling Monday through Thursday, you can still, and someone on my team made this work very well, you can still get a lot of family time in. Then it was always around 7 p.m. every day where he'd like, okay, I need to step out and I need to talk to my kids for after dinner. And Thursday, he was always home by 6 so that he could have dinner with his family Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So the firms are very aware of it, and it's almost built into it now. It's expected. Your work-life balance will be respected.
Yeah, I can add to that also. And one thing about my practice is that there's really an emphasis on networking onto projects. It's not so much people pulling you in. So there's a few value propositions with that. One is you can really create your own career. Like I could literally just be doing M&A, which is completely different than tech consulting, like next week if I wanted to be honest. And also it allows you to really pick where you want to work. So I Uber to work from New York City. They pay for it. It's awesome. I mean, I work in New Jersey, Philadelphia, because I'm paying a ton of rent in New York, and I don't want to be away from that all the time because then it's just a waste of money. So I understand. I'm not really at that point yet where I'm looking to get married or have kids or anything, but I really don't want to be going to Washington State or San Francisco or whatever. It's just not what I want to do. And Deloitte gives you the freedom to really choose what kind of lifestyle you want to work.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say, I think there's a real reality that big firms like ours recognize that folks in your generation want something different out of their job than folks in my generation did, and we're doing everything we can to adapt to that. So yes, there's some of that, but I would encourage you guys to dispel a lot of that stigma in making your choice.
And off of that as well, I have friends who have never left New York, who are based in New York. And then, there's me who can be all over the place. It is so project dependent, and the relationships you build and really the path you want to put yourself in. If you want to travel every week, that is completely available for you. People want to staff you. But if you are looking to be based where is home, your travel team, if you are on one, will be very flexible to that because it is highly respected. Your time is just as important. It is more important than anything. So your team will work with you if you need. Well, when you need that balance, we all need that balance. It's flexible. It's the most flexible career you really could go into, which is phenomenal.
And the corporate world's changing as well. I mean, our clients have virtual work programs. I mean, our clients are much less in the office now than they used to be. So the fact that you don't have to be there every day because your clients aren't there, frankly. I mean, the whole world is embracing a much more virtual kind of work style, and our firms are adapting as well.
I've been on an engagement where I've entirely worked at home, so, and now I'm in St. Louis. So it's so dependent, and the duration on them is all completely different.
Thank you.
A couple more questions?
Hi, I'm Matthew Lewis. I'm a junior in VSB. Speaking to the point on employee turnover and sustainability within a company, what is the movement like within the consulting field? How long do people usually stay within a company? how often do people accept the job offers that they're getting throughout their career?
That's a good question. I don't have a metric for it,
I think
but
I have the metric.
You do?
Yeah, the metric is 2.5 years of consulting post-undergrad. So typically people do 2 or 3 years of consulting, and then they go to the top MBA because MBA source from consulting more than any other industry. And then they branch out from there. But that number is growing a lot. I expect it to be somewhere between like 3 and 5 years, which doesn't seem like a lot, but I mean, it's a lot. Yeah.
We kind of glossed over it earlier, but at the 2, 3, 4 year mark, it's probably 2 or 3 year mark, you have the opportunity to do the transfer, go to a different office, do an externship or secondment, but that's also the point where you have the opportunity to go to grad school, or at that point you could also go into the industry. So there are a lot of times where that is where a lot of people jump out, or some people come back from grad school and jump out as well. Like Leo's gonna be 2 years out of MBA, so he might be a little bit of a different path, but someone who comes from undergrad might go back to grad school and choose at that point to leave. So it's all dependent, but there's no like right path, and it's all up to each individual.
And I don't know about other industries, but I would guarantee all the firms on the panel up here, we have attrition targets. Like, at my firm, we try to have attrition somewhere between 7 and 10%. Because if you're not, then you're not weeding out your low performers. And frankly, your folks aren't retiring when we want them to retire. So, I mean, we talked about meritocracy before. The consulting business is very much an up or out mentality. And if you're not moving up the chain and building your teams, and to be very blunt about it, if I can't continue to bill you out at more money as you grow your experience, like your value to the firm becomes less and less. So it is very much an up or out, and there's a lot of folks that leave because they want to, and there's some folks that, hey, listen, maybe consulting's not the right thing for you. But there are attrition, frankly, targets that our firms have to foster that up or out sort of mentality.
But I would say on the 2 year mark, I definitely went in with the mentality of, do a couple years and go to business school and kind of reassess from there. But after working there from a year, you can kind of see it now where, or at least I can personally, where I would want to stay, purely based off the people. The people that you work with are incredible. They are very, very smart. They're very driven. They are focused when they're at work, and they prioritize that they're getting out of there to balance work-life balance. And it's really impressive when you compare that to some of the clients. You can see why people would want to stay.
Quick note maybe on the up or out policies. It is true, but just so that you're not too intimidated by those, it is up or out, but the firm will do everything they can to help you grow. So you will have all the resources, all the mentoring, all the coaching there available so that you do evolve and do get to that up stage rather than the out stage.
It's a great point.
We probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions before we go out to the networking component of the event. If anyone has a final question. Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Andy Calando. I'm a freshman in the Villanova School of Business. Thanks very much for coming to speak to us today. I was interested in consulting before this, but now I'm very interested. So you guys are the real MVPs. Thank you very much. I guess maybe Lee, this is specifically for you because you're doing graduate school right now then.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about on the slide it talks about it being potentially sponsored by like the firm and stuff like that? Like what kind of options are available for that?
Yeah, so I'm not sponsored. The sponsored comment is for when you work for one of these companies straight out of undergrad, and then they will pay for you to go to business school under the condition that you return for a certain number of years. Which is a fantastic option because business school is expensive. I used business school as a career switcher, so I was going from, auto manufacturing, very engineering into the consulting industry, and people do that too with business school where they use it to shift.
Okay. But also they have something at Deloitte called the GSAP program, which is Graduate Student Admissions Program. So you apply to that, and if you're a top performer, you get admitted into that program. And that's basically like an MBA admissions counselor, right? And they walk you through everything and make sure you're, applying with the right credentials, you're on target for that specific school, and then you come back for however long the program is. So if you go to a 2-year program, you have to come back for 2 years, and they'll pay for pretty much all of it. And the value with that is MBA programs know that you're coming back, so they can add it to their statistics that like you're guaranteed to come back, you're guaranteed to have a high salary. It's a stamp of approval that you made it into the actual GSAP program. And I know for us, every MBA program that gets applied to, the admissions acceptance rate is twice versus what it normally would be. So like Harvard MBA last year I think was 8%. For Deloitte GSAP people it was 16%. And sometimes it goes all the way up. Cornell Johnson, 100% of the people that applied through the GSEP program got in. So there's a lot of not only sponsorship, but it's also an admissions counseling. They're like consultants for consultants, basically. And yeah, they do your resume, they give you GMAT prep, they give you a technology stipend. So if MBA is what you want to do, especially with Deloitte, I'm not familiar with other firms, but it's there for the taking. And then you come back as a promoted person. So you leave as consultant, typically you come back as a senior consultant. So it's a win-win in my mind. I'm thinking about doing it. So.
Okay, very good. Good luck.
Thanks.
We focused a lot on business school just there. The firms are also really interested in this goes back to the diversity of thought, bringing in people from other degrees as well. So a PhD in physics, for example, is now something that these firms really want, just because of the diversity of thought that brings in. So graduate school, it doesn't have to be business school. It could be anything.
Professor Kelly went to law school, so they traditionally it's the MBA, but they'll pay for other programs as well amongst firms.
And the one thing to note, I mean, in the consulting industry, MBAs are not a necessity. In our firm, to be in the strategy group, you need an MBA, right? But like many of the folks here that just said, I also actually took the GMATs, was planning on going back to school, and I just decided for myself that until I decided that a job that I wanted required me to have an MBA, I thought for myself, taking 2 years out of my career progression in order to go to school, the opportunity cost for me personally was too great. So I have dozens of people on my team that have MBAs. I do not have an MBA. And I work for people that have MBAs and don't. So I would encourage you guys to all think it's not a necessity. If you want one, I encourage it. Some people are just passionate about it, and that's great. It's a great opportunity, but it's not required.
We have time for one more question before the networking component. Go for it.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. There's an awful lot of things going on in like finance right now with the stocks at an all-time high, like the commodities, the oil, and everything, and the median income household is also very high at the moment. And so there might actually be a possibility that a recession is taking place in a year or two. So from a consulting perspective, how do you think that will impact the industry as a whole and to your job on an individual basis?
I admit I'm not prepared to answer that question fully. But the bottom line is it depends on the industry you work in. I mean, I work in the life sciences industry, and when the healthcare industry got disrupted and pharmaceutical companies' margins got pressured by new government policies and new drug pricing pressures, that was actually a windfall for our industry, because they had a whole new set of problems that they needed to deal with that they didn't know how to deal with and didn't have the capacity to deal with. And I'm sure it's the same in the finance industry and in other industries folks work on. I mean, it's probably too broad of a question to answer with a broad answer, because it's so industry specific. But
in finance, the last 10 years have really finance consulting have really focused on the risk aspect. So it's been great.
But put it this way, I'd imagine our firms do as much or more business with companies that are struggling and their stock prices are going down than as companies that are growing at a rapid pace. So I'm not sure there's a direct correlation, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and a recession brings a lot of uncertainty and turbulence, and that's also when consultants come in. So if we do hit that, the firms will survive.
So let's just give a quick thank you to all the panelists for coming in.